furlong, and Mucho Gusto now pours it on, opens up 3. Mucho Gusto, impressive in victory, cruises home by 5 easy lengths.
Another Twist of Fate swings for home, opens up 4 lengths, a 5-length lead for Another Twist of Fate, a 7-length lead as he comes to the 16th pole, and look at this, he is the real deal. Another Twist of Fate in a romp here in the El Camino Real Derby.
Cortland Simmons with you here, and like AC/DC, we're back in black here at the CS Racing Report, and let's take a look at the post positions and the entries in the Sunland Derby. 9 furlongs. It is an 85-point race out at Sunland Park in New Mexico. 50 points to the winner, 20 to the runner-up, 10 for the third place horse, and 5 for the fourth place finisher. And it's a race in which many people feel it's a second-tier prep, but of course, mind that Bird, who was fourth, a nondescript fourth in 2009, shocked the world by winning the Derby in a stunning 50-1 upset. So it is a race that has some value. In the past, Bob Baffert has used it as a prep, but many people feel that he's used as second or third string. In 2019, it may not be the case, despite those who believe that Mucho Gusto, who's going to be the favorite, is a horse that is on the bottom end or in the middle in the minds of many, based on his runner-up finish, where he was beaten by 5 lengths by Improbable, who ran second in the division, Division 1 of the Rebel Stakes, and people believe that that automatically made him the second string in Baffert's barn. But I've always maintained that that was a solid performance. The horse didn't throw in the towel. He didn't fall apart at the seams in the stretch. He just got freaked by a horse who ran one of those monster races. And now we're in playoff mode. This is playoff time. 2-year-old races, though we can glean clues from it, the 2-year-old and the 3-year-old races are 2 different things, night and day. This is playoff basketball versus it being preseason, and that's what 2-year-old races are. The days of horses having that 2-year-old foundation that went on to be stars, whether it be Riva Ridge or Foolish Pleasure or Citation himself or Secretariat or Affirmed or Spectacular Brid, Seattle Slew, horses like that were 2-year-old champions that went on to 3-year-old glory, those days are not as significant and are pretty much almost a dinosaur at this point in the 21st century. And so with that being said, the 2-year-old races just don't bear as much significance. Over the years, we've seen a lot of 2-year-old horses end up not being, part of a prominent, not being prominent as 3-year-olds, as Charles C. Canty said, and I've mentioned this in previous podcasts. We've seen over the years a lot of, 2-year-old juvenile winners, particularly even the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, be advanced sprinters that when the distances stretch out, they can't carry that brilliance over a route of ground. So again, Mucho Gusto, I believe, is far from being a second stringer. This is why this Sunland Derby may have some significance in 2019, and there's a couple reasons why. Let's take a look at the post positions. Number 1 is the favorite, Mucho Gusto. He's 8-5 in 3 starts. He has 4 starts. He has 3 wins in 1 second. That Los Al Futurity, he was very impressive in the Bob Lewis against what people thought was a soft field, but what was important was the fact that he showed tactics in which he was able to rate rather than absolutely needing the lead. That's very, very important in a race like the Kentucky Derby where you need to utilize speed. That's going to be obviously a factor if he can qualify in terms of how much speed based on post position that you need to use. And then from there, if you end up being in the lead, obviously you have to have the stamina to be able to go that 1.25 miles. But if there is other opposing speed, can you be relaxed and accept the fact that someone else wants the lead? And that's going to be real key for a horse to not have the edge, or to take that edge off and be smooth and smoothed out in order to be able to navigate that distance. Bob Baffert said after the Bob Lewis that in order to get to the next level, he would have to show those tactics rather than be a horse running wild on the front end trying to steal races. So that's going to be important. He's 8-5 coming out of the number 1 hole. There's no question he will use his speed to get out and establish position. Then it'll be interesting to see if he inherits the lead and he will get the opportunity to cruise on the front end, or if he will do what he did in the Robert Lewis if someone else decides they're a little more ambitious in the early going. Number 2 is the horse that also is making this a very, very interesting affair. He's been a synthetic sensation since bombing on the main track in his first start, or early in his career out at Golden Gate Fields, the emphatic winner of the El Camino Real Derby, Another Twist of Fate, a son of Scat Daddy, who we all know, sired the Triple Crown winner of the previous year of 2018, Justify. Blaine Wright is the trainer. He's a speed horse, so there's a good chance we're going to see him as well as Mucho Gusto go out, and it'll be interesting to see the cat and mouse that will develop in this race. There will be some other speed, but let's see where it ends up shaking out once these horses break out of the gate. He's 3-1 in 3 starts and 4 starts. Like Mucho Gusto, he has 3 wins. His other start, he finished off the board, so his resume is identical to the favorite. Number 3 is Hustle Up. In 10 starts, he has 8 wins, 0 seconds, 0 thirds. He won the Mind That Bird Derby, which is the major prep for the Sunland Derby over the track. He has 3 stake wins in a row, looking for a 4th. He's 5-1. He's obviously the other quality, or many people consider him to be the challenger to the top 2 favorites. So he comes in out of with that resume out of the number 3. Number 4 is Wicked Interest. He's another Steve Asmussen trainee. Asmussen has shipped him out to the left coast, or to the left part of the country, the Midwest. And he's actually 6-1. In 4 starts, he has 1 win, 1 second, 1 third. He was 4th in the LeCompte Stakes earlier in the year out of the fairgrounds. He was 2nd in the local prep, the Mind That Bird, which we just mentioned. So he has a race over the track for Steve Asmussen. He's a son of Tappet. Is it going to yield benefits? His pedigree and the added ground, are those 2 combinations, are those 2 things going to create a perfect storm where not only does he contend, but he can upset this field? Again, there's some valuable Derby points to be garnered here. He comes out of the number 4 hole at 6-1 for trainer Steve Asmussen. Wicked Interest, the son of Tappet. Also, you have Cutting Humor. Todd Pletcher has decided to use this race as a prep for him. He was one of the favorites. He was actually the top choice in the Southwest Stakes at Oaklawn. He failed miserably in that race, finishing 7th. So that's not a benefit or a bonus if you're looking at him. In 5 starts, 1 win, 2 seconds, 1 third. Again, on 11-17, in other words, he was first during the early part of the year in an 8 furlong race. And then he finished 2nd to Bourbon War in allowance at Gulfstream Park. So it seemed like, based on that, that's why he had a lot of value going into the Southwest as a horse with upside. He does get a chance at 9 furlongs to redeem himself. He's one of the interesting horses in here just because of his back class. Now he gets the opportunity in here, albeit against 2 very, very good horses in Mucho Gusto and Another Twist of Fate, along with, whether they fail or succeed, Hustle Up and Wicked Interest. So this field actually does have a little more quality. So this might not be as second-tierish a prep as a lot of people are going, as a lot of people have tried to make it out to be. And keep in mind, 3 years ago, Firing Line came out of this race after crushing the field, and he finished 2nd to American Pharoah in the Kentucky Derby. Number 6 is Walker Stalker, one of the better names amongst the 3-year-olds of 2019. He's 15-1. In 3 starts, he's 1-1-1, 1 win, 1 second, 1 third. He was first on February the 9th at 8 furlongs, and then he was 3rd in the local Mind That Bird Derby, which is, again, the local prep. So he's 15-1. He's a horse that perhaps maybe he wants a little more ground. Pasamonte Man is a horse that is at 20-1, no wins in 3 starts, wasn't very, very good in the localized prep. So, again, his odds will probably go a little bit higher given the quality of the aforementioned horses. Collusionist is a horse that is 25-1. He's 2 for 5 in his career with 1 second. He was 6th in the Mind That Bird, so he's going to have to make a lot of improvement again. He and the number 7 and the number 8 are going to have to not only make improvements, but there's a good chance that people are going to be skeptical and the odds are going to go up. Number 9 is Diamond Blitz. 1 win in 6 starts for Keith DeSormo. He too is an outsider. He's running some decent races. He's had 2 fourths, and one of those fourths was included on March the 1st against Bob Baffert's Roadster, a race in which Nolo Contesto, trained by John Sadler, was in that race, and Manhattan Up, the 3rd place finisher. So he comes out of that race. Is that the type of race that's going to springboard him and put him in the mix against these horses? Because as we all know, Roadster was the TMZ horse, according to Bob Baffert, when people were asking after Justify won the Triple Crown, who's the next big horse in your barn? And so we'll talk more about Roadster, but Diamond Blitz was involved in Roadster's return to the races on the 1st of March, and he did finish, a credible 4th in that race. So we'll see how that works out. Number 10 is iCloud. 2 wins and 8 starts. He was out of the money in the local preps at Sunland, the Riley Allison, and the Mind That Bird. So he hasn't been very, very good. Again, his odds are at 30-1, and they're going to probably be a little bit higher. So that's the field. Those are the post positions for the Sunland Derby. Again, an 85-point prep, 50 points to the winner, 20 to second, 10 to the third place, 5 to fourth. Let's take a look at the picks for the Sunland Derby. I guess, you know, if you'd like to use the KISS method when picking horses to finish 1, 2, 3, 4 in this race, and as we all know, KISS means keep it simple, stupid, then you would probably go with the number 1, Mucho Gusto, the number 2, Another Twist of Fate, the number 3, Hustle Up, and then, you know, number 4, Wicked Interest, the first 4 post positions. That it could be as simple as that. Or it could be a situation where you'd like to go with Mucho Gusto, Another Twist of Fate as the runner-up, Cutting Humor finally living up to his promise in the 3rd spot, and then maybe you could go for value with Keith DeSormo's horse, Diamond Blitz, finishing 4th. That's a possibility. Another scenario you could flip-flop scenario number 1 or number 2, the first 2 scenarios, with Another Twist of Fate. A lot of people think, and I was as impressed as everyone else was with that horse, in the way that he won the Golden Gate Derby, where he just blasted the field, including Bob Baffert's Kingly, who had come in with some high regard. And he looks like a horse that I think, at this point, I think he's matured, and I think he'll handle the dirt. But everybody's going to ask the question if he doesn't win or he doesn't run particularly well. Well, he's only a synthetic sensation. So that's going to be the question on him, not to mention the added ground. But if you want to use another scenario to use him, I would say the number 2, the number 1, and then perhaps once again Diamond Blitz, the number 9, and then maybe you could put in Cutting Humor, the number 5. I think Cutting Humor will run well. It's just a question of how good his performance is. Can he get points? And then off of that, will Todd Pletcher then make the determination if it's good enough to be able to cross-pollinate with the other horses from the other regions and the other major and the surrounding major preps for the Derby, and whether he can be a viable contender in there. That's going to be the key, not only with him, but with a lot of these other horses. For Bob Baffert, for Mucho Gusto, he has to do what is expected of him to run well, really to win this race, and really then from there be able to conclude whether he really belongs in the Derby. And I think that really, in my poll, he's been my number 1 horse until Improbable and Game Winner ran. I've said from the beginning that he was my number 1 until Improbable and Game Winner show otherwise. And they ran very, very well in their respective divisions of the Rebel, but Mucho Gusto still has the fastest time at 1 mile and a 16th. Again, that's not the measuring stick to literally pick your Kentucky Derby winner, but I believe this horse can carry his weight and carry his speed a distance of ground. I think he can win the Kentucky Derby, but again, we'll see if that ends up being a very prophetic, prediction, or if I end up falling on my face and I'm going to have to eat a heaping and helping hand or helping bowl of crow when making that assessment. But I think he's a real talent, and I think he's got enough pedigree. But again, those are my picks in this race. I think you could easily go 1, 2, 3, 4. Mucho Gusto, Another Twist of Fate, Hustle Up, and Wicked Interest. But again, take a look at perhaps a couple of other horses. Use Cutting Humor, maybe Walker Stalker. Diamond Blitz, I think you should definitely play him a couple different ways to possibly impact his race based on the fact he ran reasonably well in that allowance on the 1st of March against Roadster, in which he finished 4th behind Roadster, Nolo Contesto out of the Sadler Barn, and Manhattan Up. So those are kind of the scenarios that for those of you looking to sort of have an idea of who to pick for the Sunland Derby, those are the ones that I think you might want to play for the 2019 Sunland Derby. Mucho Gusto will be the favorite going up against Another Twist of Fate.
Another Twist of Fate has put away Kingly. Another Twist of Fate swings for home, opens up 4 lengths.
Up there at the top of the stretch, Mucho Gusto.
A 5-length lead for Another Twist of Fate. A 7-length lead as he comes to the 16th pole.
They're in the final furlong, and Mucho Gusto now pours it on. Opens up 3.
And look at this. He is the real deal.
Mucho Gusto, impressive in victory, cruises home by 5 easy lengths.
Another Twist of Fate in a romp here in the El Camino Real Derby.